It's my pleasure now to introduce, and I hope everyone can, I said in the beginning I wanted to make this as interactive as possible. I really do hope you have questions, and do raise your hands. Do not be shy. I'm going to introduce right now Muhtar Kent, of course, the CEO of Coca-Cola, founded back in 1892, talking about playing for the long term. And I should say that Muhtar found his job at the Coca-Cola company in Turkey through a newspaper ad back in 1978. He started working on Coca-Cola's trucks. Muhtar, come on out here. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, by the way, before we get into it, this is a product place. Is Smart Water yours? I know you got the Coke here.
You know the answer to that, too.
I do know the answer to that, too. Thank you for being here. We do want to talk about the long term, and you are clearly a long-term company and a long-term player, but a company in transition, of course, as everybody is. But here's where I want to start, because we haven't really done it with anybody yet in a meaningful way, which is arguably you have your pulse on more parts of the globe as a consumer company than just about everybody else. And when I talk to you in the back, you're usually on an airplane more often than you're on the ground these days.
Right.
Give us, just to help us understand where you see the opportunity and the risks globally right now. So we've talked a little bit about China this morning with Gary Cohn, who just came back from China, and some others. We talked with Ginny about that as well. But sort of how do you see it? And if you were to sort of go region by region and sort of try to look out, if you could, for us over the next 10 years, where you think this is all going to play out?
Sure. First, thank you for inviting me. Great to be here. I'll just for the record, I actually started in Atlanta in 1978.
Good fact check, thank you.
I looked at a New York Times ad, and that's how I got my job.
Wow.
And there wasn't any connectivity in those days. So and I did work on trucks in the beginning of my career for about a year. I think there's opportunity everywhere around the world. But the best way to describe the world today for us, we're a company that operates in 207 countries around the world, and operates doesn't mean loading up containers and sending products into a market. Operates means operating a factory on the ground, operating a logistics system, a value chain system on the ground. I think the best way to describe is heightened volatility in the world. Things that happen that you have a hard time expecting them to happen. That's the world we live in. Rapid changes, much more rapidly than 12 months ago, 24 months ago, 36 months ago. So, but if a quick tour, I think Latin America is going to continue to struggle because Brazil is struggling, and Brazil will continue to struggle for a while. Certainly, there's a lot of upheaval in the general sort of brand Brazil compared to what it was 5-6 years ago or even 4 years ago. So we see, and then there's new elections coming up in Argentina. But I think generally speaking, it will be a picture of ups and downs, but generally probably continued volatility in Latin America. I think in North America, look, the economy in North America, if somebody said 5 years ago, 4 years ago, is going to be one of the drivers of the global growth, people would have said, what are you talking about? And that's what's happening. Certainly, there's still a big gap between the haves and have-nots in the United States, but the haves are doing better, and it is certainly being seen in disposable incomes. Mobility is up in North America, which is a big, important factor for a company like us. Mobility is driven by lower oil prices and just sentiment. So all of that it's not going to be out of the park, but certainly steady, good steady, continued sort of 2 to 3%, I think, continued growth. And many companies will do better than others, but we see a green light here in the United States for our business. And then Africa is still probably the most dynamic environment from a consumer goods perspective. Disposable incomes growing at 6/7 across Africa, both Sub-Saharan and North Africa. And despite what you hear, everything you hear about political volatility in North Africa, still they're adding to the middle class in Africa at a pretty fast rate today in the world. Europe, next 3 years, I think, is going to be better than the last 3 years, but the horizon after the next 3 years, it's still, there's no light at the end of the tunnel in Europe. But the next 3 years, I think, is going to be certainly more positive than the last 3 years. A lot of things are priced in, and we feel the European consumer sentiment is beginning to show some green shoots. Right. And then Asia, now finally everything has come out of the closet in China. We've been always saying there's 2 to 3% gap between disposable incomes and GDP, and finally now GDP numbers are coming down, and I think we will see a lower growth rate coming out of China than in the next 5 years than we did in the last 5 years. But all companies adjust and and keep on growing in this environment. And then the rest of Asia, there's a lot of positive sentiment about India when the government changed, but that isn't coming home to fruition and showing in the numbers, and it probably won't because of the centuries-old issue in India between the provinces, the power of the provinces, and the lack of power of the central government to get anything done, that really makes a difference.
Right. Help us with this. I said you are a company in transition, as all companies are. I imagine we will talk about some of the health questions and issues around Coca-Cola. But if you were to identify the single biggest risk to Coca-Cola right now, it is what?
I just think I always say what I lose sleep over is arrogance in our company, a company of 770,000 people spread across 207 nations, some of the best brands in the world. And I think that, if you look at that is what I lose sleep over, and therefore we need to be faster. We need to operate like a poor company and operate like a startup. And that, to me, is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity we have.
Okay, well then let me ask you about the health issue, and I know this is going to pain you, but Tom Brady recently said that Coca-Cola is poison for kids. When you hear that, you think what?
Well, when I hear that, I think of all the things that we're doing in terms of innovation, in terms of new products, in terms of choice, in terms of being a single product company for 100 years, and then now we have 500 brands, and we have 3,000 products across the world. We play, we invest and play in dairy, like our new venture here in the United States with Fairlife, value-added dairy, protein drinks, every kind of water products. And the current trajectory in the United States is just for still beverages, it's a $40 billion retail value business, and of that we have about $9 billion, and it's growing very rapidly. And we keep on looking for bolt-on acquisitions that make sense. We keep on looking at what we can innovate with. So teas like Gold Peak, that is now one of the fastest growing brands in the United States. Or we recently made an announcement in a liquid snacks company called Suja. We have our own products, brands like Simply, that are doing really well. So I think the key is to innovate and have products that taste good. You cannot be successful in the world of beverages if something does not taste good and has the greatest flavor. But the key is to innovate with the best flavor, with the greatest flavor, and offer choice and market your products responsibly. And that's what we're doing. All the things that we have done to reduce calories, to innovate products that don't have sugar, to innovate products that have bubbles, less bubbles, more bubbles, no bubbles, middle calorie, no calorie. And in the world, there's one thing that is common to the world, no matter if you're in a village in China or if you're in the United States or if you're in Switzerland. For the world, this is a commonality. It's more fun to consume calories than spend calories. And the challenge we all have is to make sure that we can basically create collaborative movements between business, government, and civil society in the world, because government can't solve these issues, whether it's malnutrition or overnutrition. Government cannot solve these issues alone. neither can companies, and neither can civil society and NGOs. We have to come together, creating that golden triangle, Andrew, to try to come up with innovative solutions on whatever we're going to do in terms of new products, in terms of innovative products, in terms of how we market, how we go to market, and how we create our value chains.
But long term, let's go 10 years out. How much of your business do you think is this versus this?
I think this will grow and this will grow. Let me give you an example. In the United States, close by here, we have created, innovated smaller packages for Coca-Cola, brand Coca-Colas. Packages like this, mini cans, smaller glass bottles, bottles of Coca-Cola made in Mexico. And those are growing at double digits. Smaller packages. Coca-Cola was created in a first 6.5 ounce, then a little later on in an 8.5 ounce bottle. And it was not done out of an accident. It was basically enough product that you could take the last sip and in a cold bottle, and you would want another sip.
Right.
And so when we look at how consumers are indulging in our smaller packages, those packages are growing at double digits. So the consumer is not in any way saying, I'm not going to have any Coca-Cola or any other product that has calories. Consumers saying, give it to me in the right package, give it to me in the right conditions, and I will decide what I have. And they're voting with their pockets to basically move towards the smaller packages, and that's driven by us. And that's one of the things, but that's not obviously the only one. What I'm saying is we're continuing to innovate. Coca-Cola Life is another example where it's a combination of stevia and cane sugar. And there'll be many more iterations of this as we progress, and better tasting ones. Because the key is it's to provide the flavor so that people can buy it again, want to buy it again, and ensure that it is in the same category in terms of calories that they expect.
To what extent, though, do you think that policy may change? And the reason I ask is people talk about a sugar tax. In Berkeley, California, there's a sugar tax now, effectively. There have been other places throughout the world that have talked about a sugar tax. What do you think the real possibility is for that, and what should your role be in that conversation?
Our role is to continue to innovate, continue to provide new products that basically also deal with the issue and help with the issue, and work in collaborative mode with science, with the NGOs involved, with the governments, local governments, national governments. But we believe that is the better solution, and a solution of a discriminatory tax does not solve the problem. It, in fact, in many cases, adds to the problem. What does solve the problem is how we can bring more products to the fore, to the choice of consumers that are expected by us and are expected by the consumers. I think that is the key. And what we see is, whether it's in Britain, whether it's in Italy, whether it's in emerging markets, what we're doing related to offering lower calorie products, commitments to reduce calories, like what we had here in the United States with the Healthy Weight Foundation, and the whole industry has worked together to make a commitment to reduce calories by 20%, is really working. It's providing a great leadership to other companies in the food and beverage sector. Right. And by the way, again, sugar is in every single product. It is one of the biggest users of sugar is the bread industry. You cannot just demonize and say it's bad for you. It's the quantities, and it's how we go about it, I think, is the critical thing.
You knew I was going to ask you about this, so speak to this. Earlier this year, the New York Times wrote a story on the front page of the paper about Coca-Cola funding research that suggested that maybe Coca-Cola and other beverages weren't the problem, but that it was that it was really an exercise issue. You came back and wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. not apologizing for what took place directly, but for saying that lessons were learned and you wanted to be more transparent. What happened in that experience for you?
Firstly, I think it's all about fostering good science to provide input into the debate about a major, large societal issue like obesity. And for us, we have worked with science, good science, to help foster that debate. We've never tried to hide anything. We've never been doing this in any sort of behind-the-walls approach, taking a behind-the-walls approach to this. And I think what we have learned is we need to be even more transparent and basically be proactively talking about what we're doing, and that's what we're going to do.
Is it worth funding that research, though? I mean, going forward for you?
I think it's always worth to make sure that you have a group of completely neutral, independent scientists and advisors that can advise you in the right way. That's a benefit. You know, if you have a group of independent scientists, good scientists that can provide good science, work with us to ensure that we can learn from them and we can be more transparent and we can provide more innovation as a result of that, that's a benefit to all. That's how we see it. And that's what we're going to be doing going forward. Publish on our website everything, proactively. No one has to search for it. We can talk about it openly. And we're not ashamed of collaborating. The world belongs to power of partnerships. And that's how I describe my business, power of partnership. Partnerships with our bottlers, partnerships with our retail customers, partnerships with governments, partnerships with universities, NGOs. That's the way the future has to work.
Right.
We talk about compartments.
We talk about playing for the long term a lot today and what that means for a company like yours. A number of consumer goods companies like yours have been taken over effectively by Warren Buffett, who's also one of your investors, but also 3G, a company that has known for cutting things, let's just say. I will read you a quick quote. You know this quote. Georgie Powell-Lemon says at 3G, "Costs are like fingernails. You have to cut them constantly." How much do you think about the need to keep cutting and against sort of the competition, which has now potentially cut so much out of the business that it puts pressure on you in terms of shareholders?
No, I think it has to be always a balance. Coca-Cola is about a long-term model, value creation model, long-term partnerships with our bottling partners. We have 300 bottling partners around the world that we've worked for decades with, generations with, their families, most of them family businesses. And that's why we're such a multi-local, multi-global business. And what the model for us is to invest together, create value together, and share it equitably with our bottling partners. That's the model that Coca-Cola has been successful for the last 129 years. And so what we look at is not a private equity model, but a model that is based on long-term value creation. And based on that, there has to be a balance between how much you cut, how much you drop to the bottom line, and how much you invest. But the key is to grow the top line and to keep growing the top line in a sustainable manner. So I think, but to do that, I think you certainly can't afford to invest or spend on anything that's not going to do that. You've got to be very targeted in terms of how you approach things.
You're one of the biggest spenders in terms of marketing. And Coca-Cola's, over the years, had remarkable image campaigns. People know the brand around the world. We're going to have Peter Thiel and Chris Sacca come out in just a moment. And one of the things that's changed, obviously, is the media space in terms of where your money is going. And the ability to create a shared brand. How do you think about that? Where do you see all the money moving? And does that fractured sense create a challenge for you or an opportunity?
I think it's an opportunity, Andrew. And here's how we think about it. In the old days, before connectivity, we used to make good products, have great distribution, have great availability, and have good communication, hopefully great communication, through traditional media channels, and create positive consumer impressions on our consumers,
right.
but generally a one-way dialogue, and then that positive consumer impression would then turn into positive purchase intent, hopefully, and that's how the model worked. Today, it's a very different model. Today, the newly empowered consumer does not want one-way communication. Secondly, the role of traditional media has been dampened. And today, our role is to still make good products, still have great distribution, still have great availability, but then turn into a mode of creating positive consumer expressions between consumers about your brands. And that basically necessitates moving rapidly into social media, rapidly into the new streams of channels of media. And like all consumer product companies, we have also shifted dramatically between low single digits to now double digits and even higher into social media. And that trend will continue. When you think about, how fast everything is changing, connectivity, and the rise of middle class in emerging markets, the differences in terms of how to connect to emerging market consumers or Western market consumers is narrowing down dramatically.
How much does then the Coke brand that wraps this whole thing matter? I don't know if you remember, but a year or two ago, I told you about this commercial that you guys used to run in London, where it was an image campaign with these swings. You know what I'm talking about? And I told you that I cried when I saw the commercial. It's one of those great image campaigns. And you said to me, yeah, but it doesn't sell product. In the end, now that you have so many different brands, how are people supposed to, and does it matter how they feel about Coca-Cola?
I think everything matters about what they feel about Coca-Cola, but also what they feel about the other brands and how they interact. And I think Coca-Cola is a brand that, again, has 100 million members on its Facebook page, highest ever number for any consumer products business or brand. And so it's a great platform to ensure that you can continue to generate a value-based two-way communication with your consumers about that brand, but also about any of the other 500 brands that we have around the world. And we never, we learn every day. For 100 years, one brand, a couple of packages. For the last 29 years, 500 brands. And this is increasing. Right. This is growing. And more consumers tell us they want to vote for products with their pocketbook that basically are in line with their own notion of the environment, notion of sustainability. The way they want to live is the way they want to vote and spend money on products.
So here's a sustainability question. Al Gore is going to be here in just a bit. You recently announced that you're on track to meet what was a 2020 goal for water replenishment, and you've done that now 5 years ahead of time. So by the end of this year, you will have done that. How much of that is about the feeling we have about Coca-Cola? How much of that is about economics? When you think about your sustainability programs, what's the calculus?
Firstly, if there's no direct algebra to your bottom line on big sustainability projects and big sustainability strategy, a major sustainability strategy, it doesn't work. It just basically cannot be sustainable. You just can't spend money because you want to look good. And so take the example of water. When we made a big commitment 5 years ago to say by 2020 we will, in 2010, we will become water neutral in the world and lead the way and help others also to follow in terms of treating water with respect, because we said water is not treated with sufficient amount of respect around the world. And it is still true today that water isn't treated with sufficient amount of respect. Now, we said we will do this through reducing the amount of water in our 1,004 factories in 207 countries, using technology to reduce the water. Secondly, recycle the water before we give it back to the city reservoirs. And thirdly, to replenish, because the first two are not enough to get us to water neutrality. And we got there 5 years before. And now our goal is going to be to work with down our supply chain, with all the citrus growers that we buy all our oranges from. We are the biggest buyer of lemons and oranges in the world. We have plantations that are more than 30 million trees around the world in stone fruit, like peach and apricot and plum and cherry, and also with all the juice business that we have. We're the biggest producer of juices in the world. So we're going to work, because the biggest amount of water, what we use in the world, which is close to 500 billion liters, is 6 months of the supply of Mexico City. And basically half of the city, the water that's pumped into the pipes in Mexico City gets basically leaked out because of the age of the pipe. So there's a lot to be done, but I think we government can't do this alone again. Neither can NGOs. We partner with the World Wildlife Foundation fund in this endeavor, in this water neutrality effort. And then we also are one of the largest owners of refrigerated equipment in the world. We own millions of pieces of refrigerated equipment in the world, and we put in a system called EMS, which is Energy Management System. So we are now generating huge amounts of energy saving, and also HFC-free coolers, so that now 100% of all the energy-free coolers, all the coolers we put in the market are HFC-free, to help, again, with the environment and with the carbon. And so these are some of the big things that companies like us can do. And then we also have to partner in some of the industry gatherings and industry organizations like the Consumer Goods Forum, which we're a member of, where the whole entire group of retailers and consumer goods companies can make big commitments towards the same goal.
On that note, let's throw it open. We have a handful of questions. I know there were some people who mentioned they wanted to ask a question. Yes, sir. We'll get this microphone to you right now.
Hi. First of all, thank you for coming today and speaking to us. My question is, given that you're the lead of a company that has one of the most recognized brands in the world, it's successful across multiple geographies and cultures, could you speak to some of the challenges and successes that you've experienced and how you maintain that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, on a personal basis, I feel I'm blessed. I said at the beginning, I fear arrogance the most, because I've probably been to almost every corner of the world, because in this business you have to see and be seen, and be with partners and all your stakeholders all the time, and then listen really well. But the thing is, if I go to a small village, in Tanzania or in the mountains in the Andes, I'll go to a village and they say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I sell Coca-Cola and other non-alcoholic beverages, and they never will again. I've never heard in my life, 38 years now, and being in working for the same organization, when they say, what is that? I've never heard that. Even in a little island in the middle of the ocean in the Fiji Peninsula, I've never heard anyone say, well, what is that? And that can give you arrogance, and that's what I, kind of always am cognitive of every single day when I wake up. But I think I'm blessed to work in one of the most dynamic industries in the world. Hydration, quality, providing quality beverages, providing choice, and creating brands. And I always say, a brand is a promise, and a good brand is a promise kept. And one day, sometimes they ask me, what do you do? I say, my job is to get up in the morning and go to a place where I can polish our brands a little more. And that's how you win with brands. If our brands are strong, we will always win, because our bottlers invest in the business. We co-invest together. We invest in marketing. They invest in infrastructure and the values-based value chain, I call it. values-based value chain. That's how I refer to our value chain. And that's the picture of success.
Let's see if we can sneak another question in. Yep, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. So there's been a fair number of some kind of big deals in both like snack foods and alcoholic beverages in the past year or so. Do you think it is technically possible, and then could it be feasible for you to do some cross industry, get into some of those industries activity?
Yeah, if your question is, would you look at investing outside of non-alcoholic beverages, the answer is we see so much opportunity that we would be wasting opportunity in what we know best. You know, today there's two billion. Like 5 years, we feel that beverage brands, good beverage brands, are going to be created in 3 ways, not 4, not 2. Continued ready to drink, be put in a package, put a label on it, brand it, and market it, and get it to the consumer. The second is at the point of sale of the food service, all the restaurants that everyone eats at, you know, on premise. And we have innovation there. Freestyle, which is a modern 21st century dispenser that will give a choice of 130 drinks to the consumer. And people love to create their own, co-create drinks there, mix and create their own drinks at the point of sale at a restaurant. And then the third is at the home. And think of that as a triangle. Again, I call them technology-driven incremental consumption occasions. At the home, food service, and at the retail through ready-to-drink. And to the extent that you can do that, we will continue to grow our business and grow value ahead of the industry. And therefore, the answer to your question is, it'll be such a long time until we exhaust that opportunity that in the horizon, I would say, we're not thinking that. Well, we're thinking of other creative bolt-on acquisitions. We've just recently invested in a company called Suja in the United States. Before that, in Honest Tea. When we bought Honest Tea in 2008, it was selling 112 million bottles. And last year, this year, it's going to cross 1 billion bottles. And there's tremendous growth and wonderful opportunities in this area.
Muhtar Kent, everybody, thank you. Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you, Muhtar. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I've got microphones that are